Pause to acknowledge the place we exist, connect, and create is the traditional unsurrendered territory of the Abenaki people, one of 5 Wabanaki nations who have continued an enduring presence with this land. We honor Abenaki ancestors, past, present, and future. And in the chat box, I am putting, sometimes the captions don't catch spelling of some of the things I just said, so I'm putting that in, and I'm also putting a link for if you are looking to learn more about Abenaki culture, art, and history, please visit abenaki-edu.org. Great organization to learn more about those things and the Abenaki folks in our community. And so welcome, we're here. Katie's gonna continue and welcome us more. Katie, do you want me to do a verbal description now, or you want me to do it after when we go into the next piece?
I'm just getting our slides set, sorry.
Perfect, no, that's okay.
I think now is great, Kat. I'm gonna pull up our slides while you do that.
Perfect. So hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Kat Redness. Katie Miller's here with me. She'll introduce herself. We are both from Inclusive Arts Vermont, and we're so thrilled to be here with you. As Katie said, you'll see some people are posting this in the chat. Please feel free to post your name, where you're from, what organization, and just anything you'd like to share in the chat. And Katie will talk about this, but cameras on or off, we're going to have some interactive pieces. We'd love to see, your faces during that, but also that's a choice point for everybody. So I'm going to do a verbal description, which is an access feature that we include in all of our trainings. Verbal description provides visual information in a verbal way so that folks who can't access that visually can have that. So I am Kat Redness. I use she, her pronouns. I am a fat, pale-skinned, 40-year-old woman, and I have kind of chubby cheeks and platinum blonde, wavy, messy hair. I'm wearing a white t-shirt and I'm sitting in my sunroom. There are black windows letting in light behind me, and the walls have kind of whitewash wood, and the ceiling does as well. And there's little peaks of furniture coming through. So that's me. Welcome, everyone.
Okay, there we go. Sorry. When I share my screen, I lose all my controls, and it is my one frustration with Zoom. Anyway, good morning, everybody. Hi. Can folks just give me a thumbs up or a nod or something if you can see my slides? Okay, great. I did it. You'd think after 2.5 years of this, I'd have it under control. Anyway, good morning. I'm Katie Miller. I'm the Executive Director at Inclusive Arts Vermont. This is the second to last training in our series with Vermont Arts Council on digital accessibility for the inclusion of disabled people. I'm going to start just by doing, a little verbal description of myself and welcoming you today, talk about the agenda, and then Kat's going to take it away. So I am a pale-skinned woman in her 30s. I have brown and blonde and silver hair that today is half up and half down. I'm wearing clear rimmed glasses, a gray and white striped shirt, and a black tank top. And I'm seated in my bedroom, which has grayish blue walls and chunky white trim. And you might see some animals come in and out of the frame, all 3 of whom are black. So first, I also just want to remind you all of what we tell you every time, which is that we're all humans first, right? So that means take bio breaks as you need them. If you need to be joined by humans, big or small, or animals, that is totally fine. Come as you are. We encourage you to have your cameras on. Our trainings are typically pretty interactive, but if that doesn't feel good to you, leave it off. That's fine too. You can participate in conversation using the chat box or out loud. And questions today can be delivered the same way. Interruptions with questions are totally welcome. I like to let people know that. So don't be afraid to either raise your hand or put a question in the chat box, and we will make sure to answer your questions as they come. We did say this in the beginning, but for those who've joined us since we started talking, we are inviting folks to give an introduction in the chat box, just who you are and where you're joining us from today, whether or not you have an organization or affiliation. We'd love to know. So a brief introduction or a brief agenda for today. We're going to start with a moment of reflection. And then we're going to talk about some shared definitions and just make sure we all have a shared understanding of the language we're going to use. And then we're going to talk about what makes graphic design accessible. We're going to have some scheduled time for questions if you want to save it till then, or again, interjecting is totally fine. And then we'll talk about next steps after this. Okay, Kat, take it away.
Great. So we're going to invite you to participate, and at the end, and this is going to be brief, about 2 minutes. If you want to share, you're welcome to do that, or you can just kind of use this as your own process. So we are inviting you to think of a time when you couldn't get the information you needed about an event or program. So a program comes out, there's something that goes out that's introducing it. Think of a time when you couldn't get the information you needed about an event or a program. And we want you to write or draw a reflection. So take a couple of minutes. How did it feel? Did you seek it out, or did it make you choose not to attend? What was the impact of not being able to get that information? We're going to give you a minute or two of quiet and think about that. And then we'll ask if anybody wants to share at the end. And take about 30 more seconds if you're writing, if you're drawing, and then if anybody would like to share or reflect on that, share that reflection, that would be great. All right. Is there anyone who'd like to share their drawing, their reflection, or even just a quick thought about what came to mind with this prompt? And you can share, you can write it in the chat room, you can take your camera off and offer something up. And if not, that's okay.
I can share.
Thanks, Ashley. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. My name is Ashley. I use she, her pronouns. I am a pale-skinned woman with brownish hair and hazel eyes. I don't think you can see it, but I'm wearing a gray and white striped shirt, and I'm sitting in my office. In the background is a desk and also a painting on the wall and a fireplace with brick. So I am a massive planner by nature. And so when I can't get the information, it makes me incredibly anxious. And it kind of makes me go into research overdrive where I, spend a lot of time trying to get that information in whatever way I can. And usually that includes several phone calls or searching the internet, maybe posting on social media, asking if anybody's been to where I need to go to get that information. I do still attend that program or event, but I dramatically change my sort of like arrival time to make sure that I can attain any of that information before the event or program starts. And so it usually results in sort of a bunch of wasted time that I'm, if I get there early and then, the information I need didn't necessarily require me to get there extra early, then I'm kind of just sitting around. Like, I don't know what to do now, but.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. This is Katie. I am reminded of a book and podcast episodes and all sorts of things by an author we've talked about before, Rebecca Tossig. And if anyone remembers her, she shares this story. I think in her book, it could have been an interview too. I've read and heard so many of them at this point, they all sort of blend together. But she is a wheelchair user. And she was talking about how all of her friends wanted to go out to dinner to celebrate somebody's birthday or something. And they all just picked the restaurant. Like it was no big deal. But for her to be able to go, she has to do tons of research, which involves calling the restaurant, looking it up on Google Maps and Street View, and driving by to see is like the entrance accessible and how do I get in and is there accessible parking and all these things, like hours of research just to be able to go to a dinner with her friends. And for me, how this relates to graphic design is I can share a personal story. So for those who haven't been to one of our trainings before, I'm the parent to a kiddo with multiple disabilities. And if we're going to go somewhere, I need to know if it's accessible for her. And oftentimes, if I can't find that information on someone's registration materials or whatever, and I don't know who to call, sometimes it means we're not going to go. Which means that organizations are missing out on participants and therefore, I hate to make it about this, but potential revenue, because people can't find the information they need to participate. So we like to start with this little thought experiment just so that folks, have that framework of why this stuff even matters. It's not just about graphic design looking pretty. It's about something being designed in a way where everybody can get all the information they need.
Any other quick thoughts before we move on to the next piece of the agenda? I don't want, if anybody had something burning that they wanted to share, feel free, either just unmute or put it in the chat box. Great, okay, we can continue. Thanks so much for sharing that, Ashley. And great, so now we're gonna go on. What do we mean when we say accessible, universal design, and graphic design? That's what the slide says in front of you. There's also a banner at the bottom that goes from purple to a grayish blue, and it's a white slide with black writing. When we're thinking of accessible, we're thinking of two kind of bigger ways that something can be accessible. First, we're thinking about within the program. So is the program itself accessible? Is it going to be, am I going to be able to access the building? Are there considerations that are making the actual programming accessible? But then the marketing effort itself. And so that is about, is the material accessible? Can it be read by screen readers? Does it have information I need? Does it provide what accessibility features are going to be at the event? And so, and often, we do this with like people we're partnering with. It's like, one, we need to make sure the program is accessible and that it's going to be welcoming to folks that we're advertising it to, but then also, is the way it's being out there, is it following kind of our protocol for accessibility? And so that's both physical accessibility, it's also thinking about just the kind of approach to learning, to how materials being developed, and then in a marketing effort itself, what, how is it being put out in the world? And we're in our definition right now, accessible means a lot of things. We can talk about, financial accessibility, transportation. We're thinking specifically for people with disabilities. So our access for the time of this talk is about accessibility for people with disabilities. When we talk about universal design, that's it's not a limitation, it's a challenge, but it's a great challenge. And universal design is design and composition of an environment so that it can be accessed, understood, and used to the greatest extent possible by all people, regardless of their age, size, ability, or disability. So that is what we mean when universal design. So that it is not there's this one ideal human and we're designing for that one ideal human. We're thinking about design to think of the beautiful spectrum of identity, of experience, of humanity who may come and interact with this space, with this program. And we want to create an environment that they can all access as much as possible. And for today's purpose, when we're thinking about graphic design, we are talking about static design. So we're not going into animation or video. We're going to talk today about static design. So really what you're putting out on social media, graphic designs, flat designs that are not going to be moving or anything like that. And so those are kind of our overall definitions for where we're going today. And wonderful. So this is a big piece. These are like your secret codes that don't have to be secret when you're talking about design. So what is in front of me is a slide that says what makes design accessible. At the right side, there is a large question mark, black question mark in a black circle on a white background. There are also 10 symbols across that go and that are different accessibility symbols. And these are symbols that we use on a lot of our marketing to help show what accessibility features are going to be part of a program or event. At minimum, we're going to use, for the most part, the big access question mark. And what that is that is like, here's how we are thinking about accessibility, and it is on our mind. So like what Ashley said, a lot of folks are like, well, I had to do my own research because there was nothing about accessibility in the content or in the, marketing materials that went out. So this is something that we put on almost all of our marketing materials that says, here's this. It means we're thinking about accessibility. And then next to it, what we're also doing is we're putting a contact. And this is, if anything comes out of this series, it is something we've probably mentioned almost every time. We put this and it says, here is the contact person for any accessibility requests. And then it also says, here is who to contact and when you need to contact them by. So here we go. Katie's brought this up. It says the symbol should always be placed to the left of any text, accompanied by the name, phone number, and email address of the person to make an accommodation request for it. We always provide both a phone number and an email because one of those ways may not be accessible to somebody. It should also include the date to make requests by, and you can add text that detail which services will be provided. It's not necessary, particularly if the other symbols are used. Great, and again, if we're thinking about design, which is both, it's an aesthetic thing, there's this line right here that says, it's fine to change color, invert white on a colored background, as long as the color is solid and provides high contrast. And this is something that's big. You wouldn't want to blur this. You wouldn't want to put this on top of an image. You wouldn't want to change the accessibility. You want this to be a bold question mark. And there's an example right there that shows, great, this is a way to do it that isn't exactly what we showed you. And there we go. So we're gonna have ASL and closed captioning. If you have other needs, do this right here. So these are some of the other ones we use. And so, for instance, we have, there is, services for folks who are blind or have low vision, open captioning, ASL interpretation. I'm blanking on the name of the phone when.
I think it's amplified telephone. It's not a really common one anymore, but people do use it.
Right. Exactly. So, services for folks who are wheelchair users, audio description, Braille, closed captioning, general access symbol, large print, audio description, or assisted listening devices as well. And so these are all things that we'll put. So when we do a project, and you'll see this, Katie's going to share some that we've done when we're doing something. Exactly. So this was for, these are examples.
Do you want all of them or just the posters?
I think just the posters are great. Yeah, just the posters are great. And so these are, for instance, two that we've done. One was a festival, a drumming festival, and then one was our gallery exhibit and an opening reception. And so if you'll notice, it's we have in two different ways. So one, it's at the bottom. Here's the general. Both of them have the general. Here is our question mark. You'll notice we've used two different styles of the question mark, but both of them have the high contrast. For accessibility requests, contact so-and-so, here's this, here's this. These are general, these are going over the whole thing. These, and then on both of these, they also have the additional access features that are built in. So, okay, I can look that Boom is going to have assisted listening. It's going to have accommodations for folks who are wheelchair users. There's going to be ASL, large print, Braille, and services for folks who are blind or low vision, and that might include sighted guide, live audio description. There are a variety of things like that. Maybe it would be a touch tour or something like that. And you see in a new, and so these are two, it says examples, two posters, one for Boom, one for a new, both of them showing that. And it is, I think, one of the things it's like, this may not be commonplace. And so if you're not putting in all the symbols, like there are some times where, especially if we're going towards social media versus a poster, we might choose just to use the access symbol because we're using it for a smaller, like if we're on Instagram or something like that, we might use something that's smaller because it's going to be on a smaller visual screen. But we want to make sure that we're having that access symbol and those connected contacts for that. And I think Katie has put in the question marks tip sheets in the chat box. So if you want to access those are all right there. This is for instance, this is an Instagram post that we have right now, and you'll notice at the bottom of it, we have the high contrast. So this is from our Instagram. This is about an artist talk that we have coming up. And this is, here's this picture, here's a quote that we're using at the bottom. Here is our question mark symbol, access needs, contact Heidi. Here's Heidi's email, Heidi's phone number. That's how you're going to do that. And then we're also including in the caption of this talk will be captioned, ASL interpreted, verbally described, and we have an image description of what's happening on there. So if somebody with a screen reader is utilizing this and they can't see that on there, their screen reader is going to tell them that that's there as well. Awesome.
Are there any questions about the access symbols before we move on to something else? About what they are and how to use them? Okay, great. While I talk about the next section, I'm actually going to ask Kat, can you go on the resource page of our website and share the link in the chat for where to download the accessibility symbols? I think it should be there. Great. Okay, so we're going to talk about what else makes design accessible. When you're creating a piece of graphic design, what makes it accessible? First and foremost, there is this great thing called the Graphic Design Handbook, or I think it's the Design for Accessibility Handbook, something like that. This document is pretty big. It's about 30 or 40 pages, and goes into a lot more detail with kerning and spacing and slanting and like all of these different things that we're not going to go into extreme detail today. But the basics are, one, font choice. You want to make sure that you're using a font that's 14 or larger, and that's for readability. You also want to choose something that's sans serif. A sans serif font is one just like the one on the screen. It doesn't have the tails on the ends of the letters, is the way I would describe it. So it's basically the difference between Times New Roman is a serif font, and Arial or Helvetica, something like that, is sans serif. So you want to choose something that's 14 or bigger, sans serif, and really readable. You want to avoid putting pictures behind your text. It was all the rage for a little while in graphic design to have a big picture with text over top of it that was slightly transparent. That is really, really hard for folks to read, and accessibility-wise, especially on the web, it's hard for screen readers to make sense of that. Someone who's using screen reader software, which reads the words aloud or reads like alt text, and basically it reads everything you take in visually on a screen. It reads it aloud to the user. So it doesn't really know what to say when it gets to a banner of text over an image, and it can be really confusing. So try to avoid that. Left aligning your text really helps with readability. And there's actually a really interesting, this isn't so much graphic design, but it's related to marketing. There was a study that just came out about the frequency, or like the length of time people read captions on, or text on, an Instagram reel or a TikTok video, and people are much more likely to read the text if it is left aligned, because if it's all center aligned, it's really hard for folks to read. So left aligning your text. Make sure you keep the contrast high between colors, meaning it doesn't have to be black and white, but you wouldn't want to put yellow on orange and have that somebody try to read that. And there is a link. There we go. I'm going to copy and paste it. The link I'm putting in here right now is a color contrast checker for your website. So you can go to this website, put in any web address, so your own organization's web address, and it will check the color contrast for you to make sure it's high enough for people to read, which is pretty great. All right, the next thing is using more than just color to indicate importance or hierarchy of something. So a lot of people will have the same font, but one is black and one is red, or one is yellow and one is blue, or something like that. But for people who either have color blindness, or people that just see differently, they might not pick up on the fact that those colors are different. So you want to use things like bold or not bold, underline, things like that. Does that sort of make sense for people? Looks like, yeah. Okay, great. And the last thing I'm going to share is, along with color contrast, is this blog article that I read about why color contrast is important, and it goes into more detail about color blindness and all sorts of things. Okay. I'm going to pause for 1 second and stop my screen sharing and give people the opportunity to ask, are there any questions so far, or does anybody have like a specific burning thing they've been thinking of before I move on to our next topic, which is talking about creating documents and PDFs and such.
And just a reminder, you can do this both with your video or with your audio, or feel free to put things in the chat as well. Either way, we will get to them and we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Okay, great. So the next thing we're going to talk about is creating accessible PDFs. There is a difference between a plain PDF and what's called a readable PDF. And a really easy way to check to see if your document is quote unquote readable or not is to bring it up on a computer and try to select the text. If you don't get a cursor and you can't select text, the document is not readable. And what that means is, for someone with a screen reader user or screen reader software, when they pull up that document, their computer's not going to read it to them. It's just going to read them the title of the document, and that's it. It won't read them any of the text that's included in it. So in order to make it readable, if you're scanning a piece of paper into your computer, most scanners have the option to scan readable text. You can also do this now. I know iPhone, if you use the Notes app and you scan there, that can scan readable text. Technology has come a really long way in this regard. And there is a way, if you scan something as not readable, or you've received a document that's not readable, to import it into Adobe Acrobat. You have to have actual Acrobat, and then it can convert it to readable. It's not 100% perfect, but it's a good workaround if you need one. I'm going to share a link in the chat right now. A couple links, actually. This first one is on creating accessible PDF documents, and it's going to go into more detail about the things I'm talking about today. And we will email all these links out after as well, so people don't feel like you have to memorize it. And this next one I'm sharing is the accessibility page on Adobe's website itself. And Adobe goes into more detail there. Okay, so when you're creating your document, I know that in a Zoom room full of people who do graphic design, this is going to be really painful to hear. But the most guaranteed way, if you're making a PDF specifically to make sure it's going to be readable and accessible, is to start it in Microsoft Word. Which I know for those of us who are used to using like InDesign or something it might be painful, but it's the easiest way to do it that I have found personally. You can also, if you, my understanding is that the most accessible of the Adobe suite is to use InDesign, not Illustrator. Photoshop, Canva, which is not an Adobe product, but it's the same sort of vein. So Photoshop, Canva, and Adobe Illustrator, they all embed text as part of the final image. So it's not accessible for somebody who uses a screen reader. And the best options are Word, PowerPoint, or InDesign, I think is usually a pretty good one, as long as you export it as a PDF. Another option, and I'm going to share my screen in just a minute and walk you through how to do this, but is to run what's called the accessibility checker in Adobe Acrobat. And it can walk you through adding all the things you need, like tags and image descriptions and all of that stuff. So hang on one second while I pull up a document and show you how to do this. Just bear with me. Okay. So when you are in Adobe Acrobat, there are all of, and this document I've pulled up is the question mark tip sheet from before. So it's a white background with black text, has the question mark symbol on the bottom and the Inclusive Arts logo all the way at the bottom. In Adobe Acrobat, all the way on the right-hand side, if you don't have this, you're going to want it to show you your toolbar. Oh, mine's not there. Okay. I just updated all of my software, so this is why it's not showing it to me. Oh, sorry, everybody. Hang on one second. I don't know why it's not giving me all of my options here. There we go. Okay, so if you can't find it, if you go to Search Tools and you look for, and you just search for Access, it'll come up with Accessibility Check. You're going to press that button, and it's going to give you all these options. You're going to say yes to all of them, and then you're going to click Start Checking. What this is looking for is, this is pretty simple because there's not a lot to this document. A really long document, it's going to crunch through it for a couple of minutes. It's looking to make sure that you have readable text. It's looking to make sure that you have image descriptions, and it's looking to make sure that you're using headings, which are not as crucial. If there's not really a hierarchy, but if I had to pick one, I would say it's image descriptions and readable text come before all the rest of it. So on the left-hand side of the screen here, if you click 3 issues, it will tell you what your issues are. And then you can go through and click these and just fix each issue. And Adobe will Acrobat will walk you through how to fix each issue, which is really cool. This on a really long document can take a very, very long time. But on a one-page document, it shouldn't take much time at all, especially if it's a simple PDF. And I recommend doing this before you upload a document to your website or send it out into the world in a public way, just to make sure it's as accessible as possible. Okay, Any questions about PDFs and anything we've talked about before in terms of graphic design or any of that stuff? No. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about really quick is Canva. I know that Canva has become really, really popular with folks. Just either using the raise hand feature or in the chat, can folks let me know if you use Canva or what software you're using for graphic design when you do it for your organization? Even just listing it in the chat box is helpful for me so I know. Canva and InDesign. InDesign. All these Adobe people. This is a beautiful thing. Okay, so, but often use Canvas for social media posts because it's easy and allows, yes, okay. So we've talked a little bit about how InDesign is a great place to start, largely because it includes that readable text. If you're designing, say, a social media post in something like Illustrator or Photoshop, when you export it, it will not have readable text, which if it's for social media and it's a JPEG, not a huge issue, but if you're trying to make a PDF, again, not there. Canva, I've been doing some research, and Canva's accessibility is not great. I do have a couple of links here that I'm going to share. The first one is an article that goes into accessibility with Canva documents, things like PDFs out of Canva or presentations. My understanding is that they're working on fixing this, but a huge issue is that they weren't exporting things with readable text. So it was just PDFs that were essentially an image instead of having readable text on it. And the second one is a webinar by Canva on accessibility within their software and how to create accessible documents with Canva. It goes into a lot of what we talked about today about what makes a design accessible. So I highly recommend checking out the two of those. Okay, we had built in a bunch of time for questions at this point. So I'm going to give one more opportunity for folks either in the chat or out loud. You know, if you have any questions at all, we're happy to, like, if somebody on the fly wants to workshop something that they've created and we can look at it and talk about it together if somebody's feeling really brave. If not, I think we'll wind up ending early today, which is fine. Ezzy asks, are you able to design PDFs in Canva and then use Acrobat to make the text readable afterwards? You totally could. You would create your PDF in Canva, then save it to your computer, open it up with Acrobat on the computer, and then run that accessibility check. It will sometimes, I think that's it can get more complicated if it's a really complicated document and you're trying to add image descriptions for pictures and stuff, and making sure that the software appropriately tags things as what they are. But it just has a bit of a steep learning curve, but it certainly is a workaround if you want to do it that way. And I know a lot of people like Canva too because it has the templates feature and it has the feature where it can automatically resize something to a different, like you can have one design, then it just resizes for you to like different social media sizes and stuff, which is nice. Any other questions before we say goodbye today? Okay. So next steps are, per usual, we have office hours next week. That is from 9:30 to 10:30 right here on Zoom. Kat will be here, and I believe that Heidi, our other coworker, is going to join Kat because I will be unavailable that day. But you can feel free to bring any questions at all related to accessibility. It doesn't have to be graphic design, and we're just going to hang out, drink some coffee, answer questions. You could also, if you have, I'm just thinking in terms of this, often people will walk away and be looking at a design they're working on and being like, actually, wait, I have questions about this. You could bring it to that open hour, office hours. They're not recorded, and we could workshop it with you. Kat could run through it with you if that's helpful. Okay, great. We will send out a link to a survey if you haven't filled it out already, or you have new thoughts on how we can make this training experience better for all of you. Let us know. We're always happy to hear feedback. And unless nobody has any other questions, we will catch you next time. Oh, the next one is July. Kat, do you know the date off the top of your head?
7th, I think.
No, July 5th. Yeah, July 5th.
Oh, we're June 7th today. Yeah, July 5th.
Yeah. So the next one is July 5th. And that one is sort of the culmination of all of this. Heidi and I are going to walk folks through how to create an accessibility action plan. So you can come and we'll give you a worksheet and help walk you through it. It's going to be more of a working session. It's going to be highly interactive. So come ready to, we'll talk to you soon, everybody. All right, bye-bye.